Hello everybody, and welcome to the first episode of our new video series, Tier 10, the tanks in it, and what can they be used for. So, this first video, as per request, is the unorthodox ones. The tanks that they may not seem good, they may not seem like tanks that really any player can play, but they're tanks that really, if you're a good player, if you can figure out how to use them, they can be considered what I like to call a pub stomper. So a pub stomper is a tank that really requires the player to be extremely greedy in position and playstyle, that essentially forces either their team to take the hits for them while they farm damage, or they require extreme skill to get the bounces, get the damage off, and really just succeed. So, as you can probably see by now, my mouse is hovering over the first tank on the list there, the Sheridan. The Sheridan used to be absolutely broken. On release, it was insanely mobile, it could get some ridiculous auto bounces, it still can by the way, and that gun was insane. Now, it's been heavily nerfed and it's got a high skill cap now. Like, the mobility is subpar, the only reason why, really. It's very subpar in the power to weight ratio. Like, 28.5 horsepower per ton is so low. The turn rate, the control, like, it can get fast. It's fast. It hits 65 kilometers per hour top speed, but it's so slow to pick up to start. So this tank, it's a light. Let's take a peek at it in the garage. It's a light tank. Like, that's spaced armor. You will get insane bounces. The real armor profile, I can bring it up here on the side. All that pink that you see there, that's all spaced armor. So let's load that up. That's spaced armor. You can't pen that with HE. The only way you're penning it with HE is with decent penetration on the turret sides and actually on the rear of the tank. You can get through the spaced armor / just hit below. So, while it's not really a quote-unquote strong tank, here's the thing about the tank. It's mobile, it's small, it's got the camo rating, it has missiles, which I heavily disagree with, along with the majority of the community, but if you know how to position this tank, you can still just farm the hell out of the enemy team with this tank. So, on to the next one here. The next tank I have is the VK72.01K. You may be asking me and looking like, hey, this is a super heavy. It has 2608 hit points. It has really good frontal armor, but this tank suffers. This tank really suffers. DPM-wise, like looking at the AP, it has the lowest DPM of the tank type. So that's really low, subpar DPM for a tier 10 heavy. The penetration is okay, like the reload times, whatever, but also the pen. If an E100 angles well, the E100 can get an auto bounce even on the heat. You need to run the calibrated, and that means you lose DPM. So if you're running calibrated shells, let's pop over here, you can see the penetration goes up to 271 on standard and 367 on your prime. So you can get through an E100 using calibrated, but at the same time, that puts your DPM at 2293 with max crew, with provisions. Without the provisions, your DPM sits at 2165 as per here. So that's just the penetration and reload. This tank does not have the DPM. Look at the armor piercing, like, yeah, standard, it's a 152mm gun, but again, accuracy. 0.384 dispersion, which is abysmal, and 5.5 aim time. So, scrolling down over here, where are we? The dispersion is also one of the worst in class. Aim time also rather horrible. It's like, the mobility, the thing that this tank does have that makes it capable of really doing work in pubs is, let's look at this armor profile. You have this frontal plate. You have a beautiful frontal plate, and you can, so front facing, this tank, what this tank is it's a face hugger. This tank face hugs so well. However, from a range, enemies can take easy pot shots on your super weak, like angled like that, it's 300, but that's 300 millimeters. 300 millimeters. If you over angle at all, that 300 millimeters goes down to 250, 200. That's Swiss cheese. This is a German super heavy and Swiss cheese, and looking at this tank, why play this tank if you want a reverse side scraper, which this tank can't reverse side scrape. It's supposed to reverse side scrape, but reverse side scraping means you're going to be angled out like this, and then you're giving them easy shots. So there's a comfortable pen there. There's comfortable pens, really comfortable pen here. Like, this tank can't reverse side scrape. The VK100 is just better, but face hugging and mobility is this tank's strength. It is, don't quote me here, but it is the fastest of the German super heavies. Let's see, mobility, yeah, there's 25 top speed. And, okay, so same top speed forward. So it's the same top speed as the E100, but the E100 we'll get to at a later point. The next tank, I guess, on this list will be the Leopard 1. This is honestly my all-time favorite, and a lot of players' all-time favorite tanks, because it's fast. It is so fast. It has such a good gun. So, on paper, this tank is outstanding. The best in class DPM, 3668, only topped by the FV4202 Hesh, and obviously 263. Best in class DPM, penetration is good, 255 or 300. For a medium, that's quite passable. The damage, it's a 350 alpha, which means it can out-trade if need to, which the thing with this tank is you don't want to trade. You're super fast, you have good camo, you have good range. You can really play the backlines and get around the enemies. You don't need to worry about enemy positioning or... Sorry, that's totally wrong. You don't need to worry about getting spotted. If you can read a map and know how to position your tank, this tank is such a good sniper. You can snipe, you can find isolated targets. This tank's strength is one-on-one. Like, in my opinion, this is arguably one of the best one-on-one tanks in the game. And it's not because of the mobility, it's not because of the DPM, well, it is because of the mobility and the DPM, but it's because of the accuracy. This thing has, if I recall, the exact same accuracy as the T62A, which the T62A is known for two things. Its turret armor and its accuracy. This thing outstrips it in DPM, has the same, if not better accuracy, like 2.272 on the dispersion. That is... wow, that is so good. So the mobility, 65 kilometers per hour, that's... is that better? No, it's the same as the Sheridan, but the power to weight ratio, like, this thing actually can get going really quickly, really well. This thing is a fast boy. You have the accuracy, you have the DPM, you have the damage. If you're a skilled enough player to be able to read a map, you can really just do so much with this tank. Like, the armor isn't there. The view range, it's been topped by the Vickers Light. It's the thing with this tank, the reason why this tank's on the list is you have no armor. Even on the mantlet, like, there's no bounces you can get on this tank unless they literally hit the roof of your tank. Like, you're not getting bounces, period. They're just going to get through your armor no matter what, unless they get insanely unlucky. And everything will fire HE at all points of your tank. Like, 140 millimeters on the front, lower plate is 90. You can get 110 effective around above on the sides of the mantlet. Your mantlet, you don't get HE'd, but you're just a big, fat HE target. You can't brawl the mediums. You can either do one-on-one or you keep your distance and play apart from your team. That is the thing that this tank does. You have to play way apart from your team. So, that's the Leopard 1. That is arguably my favorite tank in the game. The next tank on the list is the Object 263, or the Yolo Wagon. So, the Yolo Wagon, this is a funny tank. This is a very funny tank. You have outstanding DPM numbers. Like, you have, what is it? Yeah, 460 alpha, 8-second reload, 3400 base DPM. That's without any consumables equipment. You hit 3900, which, yeah, does indeed outstrip that of the Leopard. But you have no gun depression. Gun turn limit, up, down. Up is 18 degrees, down is 4 degrees. You have 4 degrees of gun suppression. You have no sidearm. So, this tank is called the Yolo Wagon for a reason. It's fast. It's a 55 km/h tank, and let's look at this armor. 440, 350. The mantlet is penetrable. If they fire Pramo at you, the mantlet is quite penetrable. They can get through your mantlet, but then they're firing heat. This tank is a bully. This tank, if I were you, I would play this tank like a medium. You don't snipe, you don't play with the heavies, you play this as a medium tank, and you bully the snot out of them. This tank can do so much when it comes to really just brawling the mediums. The reason why it's not a tournament tank, the reason why it's not really a noob-friendly tank is, check this side armor. It goes from red to yellow. That's 80 mm. You're going to get HE'd by everything. If you make a mistake, if your hull is too high, you can't get your gun down, and that's penetrable. Your cupola is penetrable. Sorry, your mantlet is penetrable. With heat, with APCR, they're going to go through will hew like Swiss cheese. So you need to play the tank with its strengths. And the line also, like I'm personally on the SU-122-54, this is not an easy grind. The 100 M1 is fun, the SU-101 is difficult, SU-122-54, yes, you have the top DPM in the game by a mile, but your armor does nothing. So it's not a player-friendly grind, it's not a player-friendly tank, but at the same time, it's such a blast to play. It's a pub stomper. It can't play in tournaments, because in tournaments there's this thing called focus fire, and you will get focus fired because you're big DPM. But this tank is fun. So on to the Object 140. This tank is really, it's the epitome of power creep, but at the same time, it's still somewhat viable. This tank, here's the thing with this tank. You've got the DPM, you've got 6 degrees of depression, which the reason why I say it's power crept is because the T62A gets 7 now. It used to have 5, which was the only thing it really had over the T62A other than armor. The view range is whatever, like your standard armor stats, your hull stats, spotting range, concealment, that's all standard. DPM is pretty standard for a Russian medium, also known as almost but not quite top of the class. The penetration, it suffers. 240 millimeters of penetration and 290 on your heat rounds. So that is difficult. You also have the .336, which is fairly standard Russian medium DPM / dispersion. So this tank has a Russian gun, it has Russian depression, it has Russian mobility, which is, it's got good mobility. Like, a lot like the Leopard 1, this tank doesn't want to brawl. Or sorry, it doesn't want to face the team. It is fine brawling, but its strength is, again, just going into the face of the enemies, and let's check out this troll armor. So, on flat ground, this is flat ground, that's 230 millimeters, and you've got 280, 300, pretty much all around. You have cupola weak spots. So, the T62A is better than this tank in the way of it has turret armor. However, let's angle up. Oh, that's 300. That's 350. Let's get a bit of hull down. So that's pretty much, that's using your gun depression. You have a 317 millimeters, and you have 2 very hard to hit cupolas. And you're a fast tank, so you can move a lot, which it makes this tank hard to penetrate. You have the trollish hull. You have the trollish turret. It's not reliable. But at the same time, this is a brawly tank. Your hull turn rate, degrees per second, yeah, you hit 60 degrees per second. Like, you can turn really quickly. Alongside with your turret traverse speed, this tank is really comfortable CADing and, again, like the Leopard 1, finding and bullying the isolated targets. So the next tank on this list, now we're getting into the British tanks. We've got the FV-4202. So, this tank is honestly kinda disgusting. This tank has, well, it has an auto bounce hull. Like, clicking into this tank on flat ground, that's an auto bounce. Like, you're not paying that. But then you look at the turret, yikes. What enemy tanks see when they look at that is they just see free pens. Like, they just lob a shell at you and they say free pens. But here's the strength of this tank. Hesh. High explosive, that's the wrong gun. You want to be using this gun. The gun, 105mm gun, L7B. Aim time 4.2 seconds, dispersion at harm wheels 0.307. That is fantastic. The DPM is 3882 standard, or with the Hesh, it goes all the way up to the top DPM in the class, 4125, preceded only by the SU-12254. So this is a skill cap tank. This is a tank that you can't play in tourneys, you don't have armor. You can't play in standard pubs as it's heavy meta. But if you can play it, again, from a distance, finding the isolated targets and getting to the side of enemies, you have 210 millimeters of Hesh pen. That is terrifying. Like, you don't want to see this tank. Also, I may or may not have been muted that entire time. I'm just saying, this tank has such a high skill cap. You don't want to use the heat gun. Yes, you suffer penetration. Yes, you really can't pen E100 anywhere, but 210 millimeters of HE pen is brutal. This tank is known to bully and kill even high tier T22s. Like, this tank is the king of brawling. You don't get the most insane bounces on the turret. The turret armor is not reliable, as I was highlighting earlier. You've got the auto bounce hull, 70 millimeters on flat ground, plus using your depression, that's auto bounce. That there is auto bounce as all hell. Turret, yeah, you can get bounces if they don't aim well, but that's an auto pen, that's an auto pen. All of that gray auto pen, that cupola auto pen. You can't hold a position, you have to stay in motion, and you have to really find the targets that aren't paying attention to you. This is why I say this tank is a high skill cap vehicle, in that you can't be the one taking hits. You have to let your team take hits. So if you can make your opposing team not focus on you, if they're shooting at enemies, that's when you can poke forward and bash them for 450 damage. Again, looking at the side armor, you have a nice little plate of spaced armor, so it's hard. It's not impossible, but it is hard to pen you from the side with HE. So you can get bounces, you can get fortunate enough to not take the damage from HE, your tracks absorb a lot of hits, but you don't rely on armor, you rely on sheer DPM Hesh power to clear out tanks. So the last tank on my list of high skill cap vehicles is the FV4005. This tank on PC has a 183mm gun. When Wargaming announced they were going to release this tank, everyone was saying, ooh, do we get another 183? Are they going to replace the Badger? No. No. Instead, they gave it a 123mm triple shell autoloader. That is a 460 alpha 3-shell autoloader. Here's the scary thing. 460 plus 460 plus 460 equals 1,380 damage. If you're landing all 3 of your shells, that is an instant Hesh shot. This tank, it may not seem like it, but between the 3-second reload time, plus it gets the British consumables, so 2.1 intra-clip, 4.2 seconds out, and you get big damage out, and it's reliable. It isn't weak, it's reliable. You get the reliable 460 damage out. The big weakness on this tank is, where is the camouflage rating here? So, concealment, it's pretty standard TD concealment, 45, 40, upon firing while stationary, 8. So, you get decent concealment, you get whatever standard TD nothing view range, but you fire and then you have to stay out, and you fire again, and then you fire again. And let's bring up the image of the death barn. So, hull, 144 millimeters, that's butter. Turret, 14 millimeters. 14 millimeters all around. And it actually is only 90-degree to reversible turret. So you can't look backwards, you can't just poke up, take a shot out, and then back down. You have 14 millimeters of armor. Everyone is just going to, if they're on PC, click their 3 key and just yeet a shell at your turret. And you're gonna get HE'd. This tank, while you can have that really scary 420 bam, 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 just burn down, you're then on a reload. It's a stock. I just got this tank stock. It's a 21-second reload. Magazine reload time 20.58. So you get your 3 shells out, and like the 183, your game is over. Like, if you're not positioned well, this tank is all about positioning. If you position badly, you're gonna die. If you position in a spot where enemies can spot you, you're gonna die. If you try to run away, you're gonna die. You also have a standard British rear, also known as you're gonna get pinned by everything. You do have a weird little bit of spaced armor there, but that's not doing much for you. So, armor, non-existent. Like the Leopard, big, bad, scary gun, no armor, big fat HE target. But this tank also, so like, let's look at this. You actually get 3100 DPM, which is actually pretty good. Essentially, that means you're gonna get, if you're already loaded, you're gonna get 3 clips out in a minute, which is actually 4500 DPM on your first load of clips, and then it's, like, that's scary. That's a lot of damage. Your mobility, it's pretty mediocre. You're not a slow TD, but you're not a fast TD. You can hit 40 at your top speed. So, punishable, but playable. That's going to be the title of this video. Punishable, but playable. And let's not look at this tank. This tank doesn't count. Thank you everyone for watching. Have a good one, and I will see everyone when I see them. Peace out.